Michael Jordan learns his first basketball coach lost everything. What he does next leaves everyone speechless. The evening was warm, the soft hum of conversations filling the air as Michael Jordan walked through the grand lobby of the hotel. It was a reunion of sorts, a gathering of former teammates, coaches, and mentors to celebrate the legacy of the game they had all been a part of. The NBA world was small in some ways, and for Michael, this night was more than just an event. It was a chance to reconnect with the people who had helped shape his career, those who had believed in him before he was the legend the world knew today. He was chatting casually with a few former players when a familiar face caught his eye. It was Coach Tony Wells, his first ever basketball coach from high school. Michael's heart gave a small flutter of recognition. Coach Wells had been a pillar of support during his early years, pushing him to grow as both a player and a person. With a smile, Michael approached the coach, extending his hand. "Coach Wells, good to see you." The older man looked up, his face lighting up in recognition. His smile was warm but tinged with a kind of weariness Michael hadn't remembered before. They shook hands firmly, and for a moment, it felt like no time had passed. "Michael, you've grown into a hell of a player," Coach Wells said with pride in his voice, but Michael noticed the slight tremor in the coach's hand as they parted. It was as if something had changed in the coach's demeanor, something Michael couldn't quite put his finger on. As they spoke, Michael caught sight of a subtle shift in the conversation. Coach Wells wasn't speaking with the same energy and enthusiasm he used to. His eyes, though still bright, seemed weighed down by something. "Coach, how's everything going?" Michael asked, his voice a little more concerned. He had seen Wells around the league in the past, but not in the last few years. It had been a while since they had caught up, and Michael wondered what had been going on in the coach's life since their last conversation. "Well, Michael," Coach Wells began slowly, his eyes lowering slightly, "I've had my share of struggles recently. Financially, it's been tough. After I left the coaching world, I had to make some tough choices. I lost everything." Michael blinked in surprise, unsure of what to make of the statement. "What do you mean? Lost everything?" "Coach, you're one of the smartest, most hardworking people I know. What happened?" Coach Wells sighed, taking a long pause before responding. "It wasn't one thing, Michael. Life just caught up with me. You know how it is. The business side of things is tough, especially when you're not in the limelight anymore. I invested in some things that didn't pan out, and well, it all just went south." He looked away for a moment, clearly wrestling with his emotions. "I'm just trying to keep my head above water." Michael's stomach dropped as he absorbed the weight of Wells's words. The man who had coached him, who had believed in him when no one else did, was now facing hardships that Michael couldn't have imagined. It was a gut punch. He thought back to all those early mornings, the endless hours spent in the gym with Coach Wells, pushing him to be better, to give more. Now, to hear this, it didn't sit well with him. "Coach, I had no idea," Michael said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You were always there for me. I can't believe you're going through this." Coach Wells gave a small, wry smile. "I didn't want to burden you with it. You had your own journey, your own dreams. I didn't want to distract you with my problems." But Michael wasn't willing to let it go. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. This was personal. "Coach," Michael said, his tone firm, "you made me who I am. You gave me the foundation, and if you need help, I'm here for you. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Coach Wells looked at him, his expression softening. There was a quiet gratitude in his eyes, but also a stubborn pride. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I appreciate that, Michael. But, you know, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. Especially when you've spent your life trying to teach others to stand on their own feet." Michael nodded, understanding the pride his coach had. But he couldn't ignore the sense of responsibility he felt. This man had helped shape his career, had shaped the man he had become. And now, Michael could see the weight of years of sacrifice and struggle etched on his coach's face. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Michael couldn't shake the weight of what he had just learned. He walked away from Coach Wells with a new determination burning in his chest. This wasn't just about helping someone who had mentored him, it was about honoring the man who had believed in him when others didn't. That night, as the event continued around him, Michael's thoughts were consumed by Coach Wells's story. He couldn't help but feel that this was the moment to act, to do something he hadn't done before. He had already made history as one of the greatest athletes of all time, but now, the real challenge was about to begin. After the reunion, Michael couldn't shake the image of Coach Wells from his mind. The thought of his first coach, the man who had shaped his early career and taught him the value of discipline and work ethic, now struggling in ways Michael had never imagined, gnawed at him. He knew he had to do something. Michael wasn't just a basketball legend anymore, he was a man who understood the weight of mentorship, the importance of giving back. It wasn't just about winning championships or making money anymore. His legacy, in Michael's eyes, was also about the lives he could touch beyond the court. Over the next few days, Michael couldn't stop thinking about how to help. He was sitting in his office at his private estate in Chicago, staring at the phone. The weight of the decision settled on him. He had the means, the connections, and the resources to make a real difference in his coach's life. But how could he reach out without overstepping, without making his coach feel as though he was being pitted? His hand hovered over the phone for a moment before he finally picked it up and dialed the number that had been etched into his memory. The phone rang a few times before a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Coach Wells, it's Michael," Jordan said, his voice warm but a bit hesitant. "How have you been?" There was a pause on the other end. "Michael? Is this really you?" I didn't expect to hear from you," Coach Wells replied, his voice thick with surprise and something Michael couldn't quite place. "Yeah, it's me," Michael said, smiling slightly. "Listen, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day, and I wanted to reach out. I know you're going through a tough time right now, and I want to help. I don't know what kind of help you need, but I'm here." There was a long silence, and Michael could almost feel the weight of the words hanging between them. He could hear the hesitation in Coach Wells's voice when he finally spoke. "Michael, I appreciate it, I really do," Coach Wells said, his voice soft but proud. "But I've spent my life teaching others to stand on their own. I don't want to be a burden to you." Michael felt a pang of frustration. He understood Coach's pride, but this wasn't about charity, it was about giving his coach a chance to get back on his feet, to rebuild. Michael wasn't about to let his pride stand in the way of doing what was right. "You're not a burden, Coach," Michael said, his voice firm now. "I'm not asking you to take handouts. I want to work with you, help you get back to doing what you love. We can rebuild together. You taught me everything I know, and it's time for me to help you in return." Coach Wells was silent for a long time, and Michael could hear the emotion in his coach's breathing. Finally, Coach Wells spoke, his voice a little hoarse. "You don't have to do this, Michael. I don't know if I'm even worthy of that kind of help. You've done enough, you've given so much to the game already." Michael's heart swelled. It was clear that his coach was struggling, not just with his financial loss, but with accepting help after a lifetime of being the one to give. "Coach," Michael said quietly, "I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because you've been there for me. You helped me find my path when no one else believed in me. You were there when I needed guidance, and now it's my turn to give back." There was another long pause before Coach Wells spoke again, his voice shaky but filled with emotion. "I don't know what to say, Michael. You've always been a special kid. I'm proud of you, more than you'll ever know. But I'll be honest, I didn't think anyone would care. I didn't think anyone would be there to help me when I fell. It's hard to accept help after all these years." "I know it's hard," Michael replied. "But we're in this together now, Coach. Whatever it takes. We'll figure it out. Let me help you rebuild. It's not just about money, it's about finding purpose again, doing what you love." The conversation ended on a note of quiet understanding, and Michael felt a surge of purpose. He wasn't sure what exactly he would do next, but he knew he had to do something more than just offer money. There had to be a way to rebuild Coach Wells's life and career in a meaningful, long-term way. The next day, Michael made some calls. He reached out to some of his closest business associates, former teammates, and other coaches who had influenced his journey. He began to put together a plan, a partnership to help rebuild not just his coach's financial stability, but his legacy in the basketball community. Michael knew that this would be a difficult road, one filled with obstacles and resistance from his coach. But he also knew that this was the kind of challenge worth taking on. His coach had always pushed him to be better, and now it was time for Michael to return the favor. By the end of the week, Michael was on a plane, heading to wherever Coach Wells was. He had a plan in mind, a vision that would help Coach Wells rebuild, not just financially, but spiritually. Michael wasn't just helping him get back on his feet, he was offering him a chance to reclaim his place in the world of basketball, where he belonged. The cold wind bit at Michael's face as he stepped out of the airport, the familiar surroundings of his private jet now a distant memory. He wasn't here for the luxury. He wasn't here for the fame. He was here for something far more important, to reconnect with a man who had shaped the early years of his career, Coach Tony Wells. Michael had made the call, set up the meeting, and arranged everything in secrecy. He wanted this to be personal. After all, this wasn't just a business deal, this was a man who had believed in him when no one else did. A man who had taught him the foundational skills that would shape his career and give him the mental toughness to face anything that came his way on the court. But now, Coach Wells wasn't the same man. His life had crumbled, the weight of failed investments and lost opportunities wearing him down. He had become a shadow of the confident, inspiring coach Michael had known. As Michael pulled up to the modest house, the stark difference between the glitz and glamour of his world and the humble reality of his coach's life struck him. This wasn't the home of a man who had once been revered in the basketball community. This wasn't the place where he had imagined Coach Wells would end up. Michael could barely believe it. He knocked at the door, his heart racing. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing the weathered face of Coach Wells. There was a look of surprise, even a bit of wariness, in the coach's eyes as he took in the sight of Michael standing there on his doorstep. "Michael, what are you doing here?" Coach Wells asked, his voice soft but heavy with emotion. "I had to see you, Coach," Michael replied, his voice steady but filled with the weight of their history. "I couldn't just stand by and not do anything. You've been a huge part of my life, and now, it's my turn to help you." For a long moment, the two men simply stood there in silence. Michael could see the hesitation in Coach Wells's eyes, the pride that still lingered despite everything that had happened. It wasn't easy for him to accept help. But Michael wasn't here to judge him. He was here to make a change. "Come on in, Michael," Coach Wells finally said, stepping aside to allow him inside. The house was modest, small, but comfortable. It was clear that Coach Wells hadn't lost everything in the material sense, but the warmth and ambition that once filled his life had long faded. The walls were bare, save for a few framed pictures from his coaching days, memories of a time when his impact had extended far beyond the court. They sat down at the kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken words. Michael could tell that Coach Wells wasn't sure how to respond to his sudden appearance. After all, it had been years since they had truly spoken. But there was no mistaking the depth of gratitude in the coach's eyes, even if he didn't say it. "Michael, you really don't have to do this," Coach Wells said quietly, his hands wringing together. "You've done more for me than I could ever have imagined. I'm just a guy who made some bad choices, and now I've got to live with it. You've moved on to bigger things." Michael shook his head, not buying into his coach's humility. "Coach, I know how proud you are, but that's not why I'm here. You taught me the value of hard work, the importance of believing in yourself, even when no one else does. I owe you a lot. I wouldn't be the person I am today without you. But I'm here now, and I'm not letting you face this alone." The silence in the room grew as the weight of Michael's words sank in. Coach Wells looked away for a moment, fighting back the emotion that threatened to break through. Michael knew that this wasn't easy for him. Asking for help, especially when you had spent a lifetime teaching others to stand on their own, was hard. Finally, Coach Wells spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "You don't know how much this means to me, Michael. I spent my whole life telling kids to rise above their circumstances, to fight for their dreams, but when it was my turn, I couldn't keep up. I lost everything. And now, you're here, offering to help me. It's hard to accept." Michael leaned forward, his eyes locked on the coach's. "It's not about charity, Coach. This isn't a handout. This is me helping you get back on your feet because you deserve it. You didn't just help me become a better player, you helped me become a better person. Now, I want to help you do the same." Coach Wells wiped a tear from his eye, his face a mixture of pride, gratitude, and something deeper, perhaps a reminder of how far he had fallen. Michael's words had struck a chord. It wasn't just financial help he needed, it was a chance to reclaim his life, his purpose. "You're right," Coach Wells said softly, his voice steadying. "I've been too proud to ask for help, but you're offering something that's more than I could ever have hoped for." Michael smiled warmly, then stood up, moving to a nearby cabinet. "I've got a plan, Coach. It's not just about fixing things overnight. We're going to build something sustainable, something that not only gets you back on your feet, but gives you a way to do what you love again, teach, inspire, build players. You have so much to offer, and I want to help you share that with the next generation." Coach Wells looked at Michael, his expression softening. "I never thought I'd be in this position, Michael. But if you're offering, I'll take it." The two men shook hands, a mutual understanding passing between them. It wasn't just a handshake, it was a bond, a partnership. Michael wasn't just helping his coach with money, he was giving him a chance to reclaim his dignity and his legacy. "Let's get to work, Coach," Michael said, a smile spreading across his face. "It's time to rebuild." As they sat together and began discussing the future, Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. This was the real victory. This was what mattered most. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Michael had made the decision to help his first coach, Coach Tony Wells, and now he was putting his plan into action. It wasn't just about writing a check or making a few phone calls, it was about creating a real, sustainable way for Coach Wells to get back on his feet and continue his passion for coaching, teaching, and mentoring young athletes. Michael had contacted some of his closest business associates, people who had worked with him throughout his career, and began forming a plan to give Coach Wells the chance to rebuild his life, not just financially, but by giving him a platform to do what he loved. The idea was simple: rebuild Coach Wells's reputation, find him a role in the basketball world again, and make sure his financial situation improved over time. The first step was to offer Coach Wells a job, not just as a coach, but as a mentor and consultant to a new generation of basketball players. Michael believed in the coach's ability to shape young minds, and he wasn't just going to leave it to chance. He was going to make it happen. One crisp morning, Michael invited Coach Wells to a meeting at one of his properties. It was an upscale, private space, luxurious, yes, but Michael had purposely chosen a setting that was more personal, less intimidating. He wanted the focus to be on their discussion, not the trappings of wealth. As Coach Wells entered the room, Michael stood up from behind the large mahogany desk and extended his hand, smiling warmly. "Coach," Michael said, his voice steady, "I'm glad you could make it." Coach Wells, looking slightly nervous as usual, shook Michael's hand and took a seat. "Thanks for bringing me in, Michael. This place, it's incredible. But, you don't have to do all of this for me, really." Michael smiled softly. "I'm not doing this for you, Coach," he said, "I'm doing this with you. You've spent your whole life helping others. Now, it's time for me to help you, in a way that matters. Let's talk about what we can do together." Coach Wells looked at him, his face a mixture of confusion and hope. I don't know what to say, Michael. I've had a lot of setbacks. And I've never been one to accept help. I've always believed in standing on my own 2 feet. But I've also been thinking, maybe I've been too proud to see the bigger picture. Maybe it's time to stop pretending that I can do it alone. Michael leaned forward, his tone serious but kind. Coach, I know how hard it is to ask for help. But this isn't about doing things alone, it's about rebuilding together. I know you have the experience, the knowledge, and the passion to inspire. And I want to make sure you have the opportunity to share that with the world again. Coach Wells was quiet for a long moment, looking at Michael as if weighing the offer. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaky but filled with emotion. You really mean that, don't you? You're not just trying to make me feel better or give me a handout. You actually want to help me get back on my feet? Michael nodded, unwavering. Absolutely. This isn't about pity, Coach. It's about you getting the chance to do what you love again, without worrying about how you're going to pay the bills or where the next paycheck is coming from. I've been working on a plan, and I want you to be a part of it. I want you to be a mentor, a coach, but also a leader for the next generation of players. There's no one better suited for the job than you. The words sank in slowly. Coach Wells seemed to be processing them, perhaps still unsure of whether to believe in such an opportunity. The skepticism was there, as it had always been, but so was something else, a flicker of hope. All right, Coach Wells said, his voice quiet but resolute. I'll listen. Tell me what you have in mind. Michael laid out the details. It wasn't just about throwing money at the problem, it was about creating something lasting. He had been in talks with some of the best basketball training facilities and youth development programs in the country. Michael wanted to create a new initiative, one that would pair experienced coaches like Coach Wells with young, eager athletes. They would build not just physical skills, but the mental toughness that had carried Michael through his own career. The goal is simple, Michael explained. You'll have the resources to train these kids, to guide them, and to teach them what it means to not just be a great player, but a great person. You'll be the mentor, and I'll make sure you have the platform to do it. Coach Wells sat quietly, listening intently. His face had softened over the course of the conversation, the rigid pride that had once kept him distant slowly starting to melt away. This was more than Michael had ever expected to offer him, and for the first time in a long while, Coach Wells allowed himself to feel a little bit of hope. I've spent my whole life teaching kids to give everything they've got, Coach Wells said, his voice steady now. But in some ways, I forgot to do that for myself. I guess I never really believed that someone like me could get a second chance. Michael smiled, his tone kind but firm. Everyone deserves a second chance, Coach. This is yours. Coach Wells's eyes glistened with emotion as he looked at Michael. You know, Michael, I never thought I'd be sitting here, talking about coaching again. I never thought I'd have the chance to do what I love. But if you really believe in me, then maybe I can do this. Maybe we can make something of this. Together, Coach, Michael replied with a smile. We can do this together. And just like that, the first step had been taken. Michael had given Coach Wells more than a job offer, he had given him a chance to reclaim his passion, his purpose, and his legacy. It wasn't going to be easy, but Michael knew that with Coach Wells by his side, they would both rise together, just as they had done on the court all those years ago. The days turned into weeks, and the plans Michael had carefully crafted for Coach Wells began to take shape. What started as a small idea, a way to help his first basketball coach regain his footing, had grown into a full-fledged program that not only impacted Coach Wells's life, but also began to inspire a new generation of young athletes. Michael and Coach Wells had spent countless hours together, developing the curriculum, meeting with potential partners, and securing the resources needed to make the program a reality. At first, Coach Wells had been hesitant. He still struggled with his own pride and the deep scars left by his previous failures, but slowly, he began to regain the confidence he had lost over the years. He was no longer just helping Michael create a program, he was helping himself rediscover his passion for coaching and mentoring. As the program grew, so did the success. Young players, eager to learn and driven by the example set by Michael and Coach Wells, flocked to the training sessions. They weren't just learning how to shoot a basket or run drills, they were being taught the principles of hard work, resilience, and mental toughness that had made Michael Jordan a legend. Coach Wells was in his element again. He wasn't just giving the players technical skills, he was imparting the wisdom that came from years of experience, lessons learned not just on the court, but in life. The kids who came to him for training didn't just walk away with better jump shots, they walked away with a deeper sense of what it meant to give their best in everything they did. But the real magic of the program wasn't in the physical transformation of the athletes. It was in the mental shift that came with each lesson. Coach Wells didn't just teach basketball, he taught life. And in doing so, he found a new sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. The first big test came when one of the program's top players, a young and incredibly talented guard named Jalen Walker, faced a major setback. Jalen had been dealing with the loss of his father, a former basketball player himself, who had passed away unexpectedly. The loss shook Jalen to his core, and for a time, it seemed as if he might fall off track. It was Coach Wells who stepped in, providing the guidance and emotional support Jalen needed. He didn't offer easy answers, but he shared his own story, how he had lost everything, how he had rebuilt himself, and how he had always found strength in the game and in life, no matter the odds. Jalen took those words to heart. He came back stronger than ever, channeling his grief into his game, and soon became one of the most promising players in the program. One evening, as Michael watched Coach Wells and Jalen working together in the gym, he couldn't help but smile. This was exactly what he had hoped for, a program that didn't just develop players, but shaped them into well-rounded, strong individuals. Coach Wells wasn't just teaching basketball anymore, he was teaching resilience, strength, and the value of hard work, no matter the obstacles. After a long day of practice, Michael and Coach Wells sat together in the empty gym, the faint echo of basketballs bouncing off the walls. It was late, and the lights overhead cast long shadows across the court. The gym was quiet except for the sound of their conversation. "You know, Michael," Coach Wells said, his voice still thick with emotion, "I never thought I'd be here again. Not like this. I thought I was done, that I was too far gone to ever make a difference again." Michael looked over at him, his smile warm and full of understanding. "You've always made a difference, Coach. You just had to remember it yourself." Coach Wells shook his head slowly, still processing the weight of what Michael had offered him. "I don't know if I can ever repay you for what you've done for me. Not just with the program, but with the second chance. You didn't just give me a way to get by, you gave me a purpose again." Michael's smile softened, his eyes thoughtful. "I didn't do it alone, Coach. You took that first step. You let me help, and that's what made all the difference. You deserve this just as much as anyone." Coach Wells sat back, his gaze drifting across the gym, the once dull space now alive with energy, potential, and purpose. "I owe everything to you, Michael. You've made me feel like I'm worth something again." "Don't ever doubt it, Coach," Michael said firmly. "You helped me believe in myself when no one else did. This is what you were meant to do. You've always had it in you." As the two men sat there, the weight of their shared history settled in the quiet moments between them. Michael had given Coach Wells more than just a second chance. He had given him a legacy, a renewed sense of purpose, and a platform to continue shaping young lives. The program wasn't just a success, it was a rebirth. It had transformed Coach Wells's life, and in doing so, had brought him back to the thing he loved most, coaching, mentoring, and inspiring the next generation of athletes. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about life. And through it all, Michael had been right there beside him, not as a savior, but as a partner, showing the true power of giving back. Coach Wells's journey wasn't over, it had just begun. But now, he was no longer defined by his failures. He was defined by the impact he was making, by the lives he was changing, and by the legacy he was building for the future.